Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's NEASC Forum, Student Agency in Action. I am so happy to be here with you all today. My name is Natalia, and I am an 11th grader at St. Raphael Academy, a private Catholic school in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, in the U.S. I am one of the 9 students from 5 different schools who organized today's webinar and are here today to talk about an issue that is very important to us, student agency. And now I'd like to hand things over to my classmate, Charbel, to kick off the session.
Thank you, Natalia. Hello, everyone. My name is Charbel, and I am a 10th grader also attending St. Raphael Academy over here in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Today's main focus is student agency. We will have our panelists define what it means to them, what it looks like in their classrooms, its challenges, benefits, and more in a discussion format. We've allotted time at the end of the hour to answer some of your questions, so please feel free to drop them in at any time today through the Q&A feature. However, before we begin, I would like to ask the other panelists to quickly introduce themselves. Let's start with Macy and Reham, then Jack and Luna, Alyssa, and Lily and Sophia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Reham. I'm a junior at NEASC Regional, which is a small suburban high school in Massachusetts with about 600 students, and I am so excited to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Macy. I am in 12th grade, also from NEASC, and I'm very excited. I've had a great time learning from all of these panelists.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jack. I'm in 10th grade, and I am at the International School of Helsinki, which is a private school. Around roughly 400 to 500 kids go there, K through 12.
Hello, my name is Luna, and I'm in 11th grade, also at the International School of Helsinki. I'm super happy to be here today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa. I currently attend Porter School, which is a small, independent, all-girls school in Farmington, Connecticut, and I'm so excited to talk about student agency with you all.
Hi, my name is Lily. I'm from Old Colony Regional Vocational Technical High School. It's a vocational school out in the middle of the woods, and yeah, that's all I really got to say. Sorry.
Hello, my name is Sophia, and I am a freshman at the same school as Lily. Like she said, it is a small school, but it's a great community, and I'm really excited to be here today.
Let me thank my colleagues for their spectacular introductions, and let me hand it off to Macy to start off the question portion of today.
Thank you, Charbel. So as part of registering for this webinar, we asked attendees to share their own perspectives on student agency. We noticed phrases like active learners involved in their learning, students making informed, self-aware decisions, and words like voice, ownership, leadership. To start this forum, I wanted to ask a few of my fellow panelists to share their own definitions on student agency. We can start with Reham, then Alyssa, Charbel, and Jack.
I am so excited to be sharing my own definition of student agency from my experience. I define it as when students have a trusting relationship with their teachers and administrators and feel empowered to take action and achieve an end result within their school community.
For me, I believe that student agency means that all students have the ability to feel uplifted enough to take initiative or action on issues that arise in their school environment. And I put emphasis on the word all because all students do deserve the right to have that space that's necessary for them to learn better inside and outside of the classroom. And if someone isn't comfortable with doing that as of yet, there are other people who can advocate for them on campus or in their school community.
I really connect with Alyssa's definition. And to me, student agency at its heart is opportunity and support to students who seek to excel outside the classroom. And this can be in the form of student-led projects, groups, and all of which are tackling different issues and interests in our world. But most importantly, it's a facilitation of an environment in which students are given the tools to succeed as individuals and not just as students.
I would define student agency as the ability for students to have a voice for what's said about the school and take charge to make those things happen. One thing like that we have in our school is a student committee called STAND, which helps our community and school become a better place, more inclusive. There's less discrimination across the board, if that's gender, race, religion, or country of origin. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm going to now pass it over to Luna for the next question.
Thank you, Macy. Before looking into how we can create leadership and engagement within schools, let's look at some examples of success. Macy, Natalia, Sophia, and then Charbel, what does successful student agency look like in your classroom and or school?
So NITMUC has a course called Legacy, which I think is a really important example of student agency in the classroom. Legacy is a course that allows students to spend one block of their schedule investigating or exploring a personal interest or inquiry. For example, I spent the past year investigating the science behind learning and how COVID has impacted schools, which is something that normally wouldn't fit in my day-to-day schedule. This allows students to expand their learning outside of traditional academics, and I personally find it really inspiring to see what my friends are interested in outside of typical academics. In terms of student agency within our school environment, we have student-led clubs and organizations such as NITMUC's Justice Coalition, which allows student leaders to find other students within our community who are just as passionate or interested in the same things as them.
Thank you, Macy. So I'm coming from a smaller Catholic private school in the United States. And within my school, we can see successful student agency when our voices as students are being heard. In the classroom, it looks like being able to have debates and discussions on the topics we are learning about. And those are healthy debates that promote awareness and consciousness. It looks like us affirming socially conscious words and phrases within our education and to our teachers. In the school as a whole, our administration has worked to be readily available for concerns and suggestions. This has led to the implementation of various student-led organizations to promote student agency, including the Saints for Social Justice Club, which I actually started with a few classmates, where we are highlighting different forms of social justice each month. And also through the Saints Respecting All Cultures Club, which is a club where each month we highlight a different culture in our community. And we are currently working on a flag display to appreciate all of the different cultures in our community. And we also have a program called More Scholars, where students work actively to create projects that better our community and the community around us to create positive change.
That was a great answer, Natalia. I would say that in my school, successful student agency is that everyone, the teachers, the students, we all work together. And it's a very small school, so we really are a community. Everyone knows everyone, and everyone's ideas are respected. And we also have a student agency board where all the students can come and we can talk to the administrators of our school. We can talk about things that are working, things that we think would improve and make the school better for everyone. And then we can all work together and make these changes happen.
So I also attend St. Raphael Academy, as I mentioned before, and I just want to emphasize a few points that Natalia made, especially about the clubs, the Saints for All Cultures Club, the Cultures Club. It's provided a voice to students to expand and to make our community more knowledgeable of the diversity of our school, because although we are a Catholic school and a small private school, we are one of the most diverse schools in our state. And we have people coming in from, I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was over 100 different countries in this school of about 400 students. So you can just understand the density of how different we all are, but at our heart, we're all saints. That's what we like to call it. We're all one Saints family. And secondly, I'd also like to emphasize the administrative support, because for me, it's been just as, if not more important than that of the teachers, the ones that you meet with every day, because They helped me connect with like high profiles that I would have no access to, such as a United States Senator, which I'm going to be meeting with by the end of this month to speak about climate change and issues relating to the climate and issues affecting our own community. And that was part of the More Scholars program, which started with a former alumni and administration. So administrative support, administrative support, administrative support, because a teacher can only do so much when they're regulated by people who don't see the significance of student agency.
Thank you everyone for your answers. It's great to see how different students and schools work together to improve their environment. I would now like to invite Sophia to ask the next question.
The next question, what challenges, giving students agency leads to genuine school improvement. How have you seen these benefits in your classroom and schools? And I'm going to pass it on to Luna to answer and then Reham.
I find that the benefits of student agency present themselves in our day-to-day. Our school policies steer away from student control. For example, we don't have detention or seating charts, and teachers manage challenges in and outside of the classroom in collaboration with students. This encouragement for students to advocate for their learning has made the classroom environment feel more safe. I feel comfortable bringing up suggestions and concerns to my teachers as constructive conversations are normalized between coordinators and teachers. This improves student learning through the construction of manageable schedules and efficient teaching methods. Additionally, student agency in our school has created a sense of belonging and inclusivity. We have started conversations on topics that teachers are less educated on or that are more constructive when led by students. For example, listening circles, where we discuss gender roles and what it's like being a person of color at our school. Furthermore, LGBTQIA+ students and allies found that there was need for more education, so they were giving both time and resources to create presentations for students around the school. This increased awareness and just overall creates a more comfortable environment for everyone, specifically students who form part of minority groups. Lastly, freedom and opportunities for student agency have heightened student interest in learning both in and outside of the classroom. Personally, I have found that the opportunity to talk to classmates and students from other international schools has engaged and also educated me on current world issues and helped me refine my interest. I think this is also the case for many other students who are using these opportunities to expand artistic pursuits or just find things that interest them within their subjects. Overall, I think student agency has increased comfort and trust within our school.
That was a great answer, Luna. Moving on
Thank
to
you, Luna. Luna, your answer really resonated with me. I feel more inspired now after hearing all the great work your school has done. Within my school at NITMAC, it's on the smaller side with about 600 students, but I feel like every single student has benefited in some way from the student agency that other students have displayed, whether current students or students in the past. For example, our administration is really good about having student voice in administrative committees. Like our school council, we have student representatives on there. And a few years ago, the students advocated for students to have access to a microwave in our lunchroom. The adults thought that that was a reasonable request, and we now have 2 microwaves in our lunchrooms that are available to all students to use. I know personally I have benefited from that, and I know other students have as well. On a slightly more serious note, students have also advocated for like increased wellness awareness within our school, especially with academics and extracurriculars. The stress can really pile on, and we asked administrators to work with students to come up with some kind of solution for that. And we came up with wellness weeks that happen multiple times a year. We are actually currently in a wellness week, and they're like stress reducing sessions twice a week. Yesterday we had farm animals come in, and we have therapy dogs come in as well. So that is another benefit of student agency and advocacy that that led to like tangible change within our school community. Less tangible though is seen in the classroom and just in like the minute interactions with students and teachers, where teachers ask more questions to students about when is a good placement for a test date? Would you guys like homework tonight or tomorrow? Things like that. Or would you like to learn this unit first or this unit? Would you like to take notes this way or this way? And that's a type of student agency that happens in the classroom, where teachers recognize that students have a powerful voice and that students can take control of their learning and make responsible decisions about their own learning. And students also appreciate that and are able to voice their concerns about the schedule or the curriculum, or voice what they would like to see. And then I feel like the entire classroom is able to benefit from that.
That was another awesome answer, Riham. And I agree with both everything that you and Luna said. I just want to reiterate, like, student agency has such like so many great benefits throughout the school, when it's in the classroom and homework, or when it's like fun things like getting a microwave in the cafeteria or getting to see farm animals. I'm gonna pass it on to our next question to Riham.
So now that we've discussed the successes and the benefits of student agency, of course, there's a lot of obstacles that have to be overcome to get there. So our next question is going to be about the obstacles and challenges that us as panelists and students have encountered. But first, we would love to ask the audience, what challenges have you encountered? You can put them in the chat, but we will also have a poll popping up. The poll will have 4 different options. Just give us a moment to pull it up. Yep, you can see it in front of you. So the question is, which of the following have you experienced when trying to implement student agency in your school or classroom? And you can select multiple answers. Starting at the top, I'll read the answers. Lack of student responsibility, commitment, or accountability. Loss of control in the classroom when giving students a voice. Difficulty measuring success and impact. And the issue that some students may not thrive in independent learning environments. So this poll is going to stay up for another 20 or 30 seconds. You can choose all that resonate with you, and then we will take the top 3 answers that are most voted and discuss how we have overcome those. Perfect. Okay, so at the top we have, wow, this one kind of was voted in a landslide. At 53%, 53% of attendees here felt that a lack of student responsibility, commitment, or accountability could be a big challenge for enacting student agency in the classroom. Macy, would you like to start us off and let us know what you would recommend to overcome this challenge?
Sure. I also saw that someone in the chat mentioned that maybe their answer was more of like a perceived loss of control, which I thought was cool. But in terms of lack of responsibility or commitment from students, I think the big thing to remember here is that student agency is kind of cyclical, and it grows as students kind of develop and get more comfortable with the idea. So I think it's pretty impossible to be in a school community where you don't have at least one student that has strong leadership skills or like is a very responsible, kind of dependable student. And I think opening doors for students that are ready to take on those responsibilities then creates role models for the students that come up behind them and see like student agency in action. And I think giving those students the opportunity to kind of step forward and start the process allows for like less of this concern of like a group of students kind of like running rampant around the school type of idea, because it is like student agency is collaboration, it's not individual.
I love that answer, Macy. Thank you. In a close second place, also at 53%, the issue that some students may not thrive in independent environments. Charbel, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, thank you. I feel that it's almost unfair to say that just simply because these students have been conditioned from since they were kindergartners or since they were 4 or 5 years old, that the school classroom looked like sitting down and listening to a lecture. Now, right, obviously, as children, there's not much responsibility you can give them. But as we grow older, I think that the process of giving responsibility should grow with age. So instead of starting student agency and just throwing students into an environment where they might feel lost, alone, and not thrive, we should build it up, maybe starting in middle school, and that's what happened with me as well, which is why I'm able to thrive now, why I'm able to take responsibility for my own actions and my own education, is because I was given that responsibility with support, of course, and not to this extent as I do now, since I was in middle school. That was in the form of seminars and projects. Like, for example, in 7th grade, we had individual projects, and my group chose the high incarceration rates in the United States. And we talked about how it was disproportionately people of color and disproportionately men of color. We talked about the school to prison pipeline, and we were actually able to organize an event in which police officers and formerly incarcerated people, experts, we all came together and we had this great conversation, this discussion. And we talked about the tangible change before. We were able to bring people to a table who would never see each other outside of the prison system. And I think that's a success in and of itself. So I think the main combat to that is, one, easing students into it, right? And second of all, giving them the support that they need to the point that they're able to stand alone on themselves. Yeah, thank you.
Sure, Belle, thank you so much for your answer. That really resonated with me. And I think just to add to that a little bit, when students are able to see that other students have taken agency successfully, students such as yourself, just like Macy said, they then have role models and are able to ease into it no matter what year they are, because they have seen that other students are able to do it. Another thing I want to mention is that student agency can look really different. It can look like a really large scale project like the one Charbel described, or it can look like teachers asking students in their classroom what preferences they have or what kind of learning style that works best for them. And just like when teachers and classmates let their students know that their voice matters and that if they voice an opinion, it will be taken into consideration. But to move on to the third challenge at 42%, the challenge of measuring success or impact. Natalia, go ahead and answer that.
Thank you, Reham. Before I start answering this option, I would just like to highlight a comment that I saw from the chat. I'll read it. It says that parents are resistant to student-led clubs when these clubs run counter to their entrenched value system. And so I know that this can be a big challenge when supporting student agency, but I just want to highlight that the biggest, I want to stress the importance of the fact that we are students and we are the future. So I think we need to add in these clubs regardless of parent values, because as the future, we need to become aware of what different values there are in this earth. We need to provide these students with these resources so that they have someone to go to in times of support, especially in a time period where mental health is stressed, where diversity is stressed. We do need to provide these students with different clubs and activities that will support their different values, regardless of parents' feelings. And honestly, we're all going to disagree on something. I think it is important to try and represent everyone. So while the parents disagree with the value system that we're trying to support here, we can support their value system in a different way with a different club. So I just think to address that comment, it is important to support everyone regardless of their beliefs, because we are trying to promote the future here as students and leaders. To touch on the topic of difficulty measuring success and impact, I just want to point out, like Reham was saying earlier, there can be really major large-scale impacts of student agency. There are very small-scale impacts. In my own personal perspective, a small-scale impact can be simply asking a teacher to use to stop using a racially sensitive word, and they will follow that suggestion. And now I'm promoting student agency and I'm helping my classroom. A large scale impact will be promoting awareness through campus displays or activities, after school activities. So it's very hard to measure success and impact with student agency, but I just want to stress the fact that there will always be impact when you're advocating for this type of thing, because it's hard to because you're advocating for students. So it can affect the smallest person, or it can affect the largest amount of people.
I just wanted to add on to what Natalia was saying earlier, that it really is important that we support everyone and that everyone feels included, because it's a big part of student agency is the students working together. And if the students don't feel like included and not properly represented, everyone's not going to want to cooperate and work together. That's why representing everyone is important.
I also want to add on to what Natalia was saying about the fact that everyone's like going to disagree about something at some point. Because I saw another comment in the chat, or a question that said, how can we ensure that students have a shared vision so their agency is effective and does not result in conflict amongst them? And something that I wanted to talk about here was the fact that student agency isn't necessarily a group of students with the same vision working together. It's a group of students with different visions learning to navigate these like dissenting opinions in order to like gain like collaborative skills, and create a vision that works for every student. So I think a big thing we need to think about when we're talking about student agency is the idea that there is like conflict and disagreement, and the idea is like students learn to navigate that, which then translates into their life outside of school. And in terms of this like measuring success, I also want to talk about the fact that like in redefining student agency, we also need to redefine success and look at what is a successful school environment and how does student agency play a role in that.
Thank you so much for your answers, Macy and Sophia and Natalia. I know we said we were only going to touch on 3 challenges, but I think this 4th one is really important, and I've seen a few comments about it. So the challenge of losing control in the classroom when giving students agency or giving students a voice. Natalia, would you like to share how you'd recommend school environments try to overcome that?
So it is very easy to think that to see that there's a loss of control in the classroom when giving students a voice. But I think that stems from the fact that a lot of students are made to feel, teachers are at a place of authority over the student, but a lot of students are made to feel like their voices do not matter because they're considered younger, part of the younger generation. So it's very easy for adults to simply dismiss our thoughts and our ideas. So I just think that it stems from that. So we need to start changing from the beginning and allowing students to have a bigger voice in our communities. I think in order to regain the loss of control, if you're already past the loss of control in the classroom, it is to simply sit down and talk to your students as human beings. It's very easy for adults to think that they need to discourage us or speak to us in a negative manner to get our attention. But the simplest part is treating us with the same respect that we attempt to give you guys, and it will be reciprocated in the end.
I also think that in terms of student agency, it's not necessarily a loss of control, like a transfer of power from teachers to students. It's more of a collaboration of power. For example, I think Rehan brought this up earlier. My school has these things called lead learner workshops, which used to be our department chair meetings. And we essentially just started inviting any student or faculty member that wanted to share their opinions or suggestions for the school to come to these meetings. And that didn't necessarily take away from the control of the department chairs or the department heads from speaking at their meeting. It just allowed more voices to be heard at the same time.
I think also to answer this question, I think that loss of control, one person in the chat said that it was like a perceived loss of control, because I think that people, when talking about student agency, not everyone's going to have the same opinion or the same response on how to act. And like to let students have the opportunity to talk it through and to work on it on their own can give them a sense of independence. And if necessary, teachers can input ideas, but I still think that students do need the opportunity to try and work things out on their own before adults can like intervene, if that makes sense.
Just some closing thoughts. All of those answers really resonated with me. It really is a perceived loss of control by teachers, because students, if you come up to them authentically and you're trying to help and trying to understand their process, I'm sure they would have no problem updating you or even coming to you with help and with their plans. I know that when teachers do that to me, I find it really helpful to just have support, but also be allowed to venture into what I want to do.
Just to expand on that, I think a really important part of this is that there can be like a perceived or, a concern of losing control in the classroom or within a school environment where students may be running rampant or not following rules. But I think from my experience, you would really be surprised how well students receive things like there are rules and you can pursue this project, you can pursue this initiative, but there are rules that no one is exempt from. So you have to stay within the parameters of those regulations in the school environment. And students are usually very willing to stay within those rules as long as they know what the rules are. So what has been effective in my school, from what I've seen, is when administrators outline like what the guidelines are, kind of like, yes, I will support you in pursuing this, but you have to understand that these lines cannot be crossed. And we have seen that students definitely abide by those. And in doing that, you gain trust. Like the trust goes both ways, right? So you gain trust from students and from teachers. Yeah, and then that just helps students be able to pursue their goals, and then the students after them as well.
So I see a question in the Q&A. I'll read it out, and I think it connects with this conversation as a whole, which is saying, some classes' curriculum or content make it harder or easier to implement student agency. How do we overcome the lack of teacher agency in order to give students agency as well? Like the first thing is obviously student agency isn't simply just about letting students run wild and taking off rules. And as like some teachers have fear, like it's about promoting growth in academic studies and helping people propel forward outside of just this assignment, this homework, and etc. Right? And these are going to be projects and groups and decisions that further help them understand the content and the curriculum better. Now, I understand that as well. Like, say, a math classroom is probably going to have more difficulty in promoting student agency than an English classroom. In English, we have seminars, we speak about books, we explore the biases put into those books and the comments that it's making about society today and the society it was written in. That fits very well with the curriculum. Math, on the other hand, we have to just move through, it's all the formulas and everything. But asking the students, do you comprehend what's going on? We talked about the setting of dates for tests, and the main thing that we need to focus on is the teacher putting forth a question, because the students are not going to expect independence and agency simply because that's not the expectation we've been given. When eventually, hopefully one day and in the future, we'll get to see students who demand and expect it because it furthers their growth and development. as students, as learners, as human beings, as people who are going to exist beyond the schooling system, as voters, presidents, business leaders in our world. And in my math class, we take time to just talk about different issues. I have a great math teacher, she's teaching geometry right now. She goes ahead and she asks us about how we are genuinely. We spend time learning outside of just our curriculum. We explore different math and different topics. We look at how it connects to history, and it's all about the accumulation of knowledge. It's not just about putting it into students' heads.
Thank you, Charbel. For the sake of time, I think we are going to move on to question number 5, led by Jack.
Thank you, Riam, and everyone for answering the question of what challenges or obstacles have you encountered or do you foresee when trying to implement student agency? But now we're going to be answering the question of how do you ensure equity and representation when advocating for student agency in your school? So the students that will be answering this will be Luna, Alyssa, Natalia, in that order.
Thank you, Jack. To me, equity and representation within student-led group is a very important factor of their success. In our school, teachers facilitated this by giving students time and space to design their own structure of leadership based on what they thought the school needed and our interest. This allowed students to come to a consensus on how everybody could be represented and what model worked best for our international school. I would also encourage teachers to look beyond students with good profiles when offering opportunities. Often overlooked students can offer a very unique perspective and set of skills. Lastly, I think that if your school is lacking the voice of a minority, you shouldn't be afraid to start conversations with students about how they perceive their representation in your school or in student-led projects. I find that when teachers come up to me, and I've said this before, authentically with the intention to understand and offer support, I will never see that in a negative light, and opening up conversations between students or students and faculty is the first step in understanding how change can take place and how everybody can find a voice in your school.
That was a really good thought, Luna. And I think to add on to that, one example for my school is our alliance and affinity spaces that we offer on campus. Some of them include the Black and Latinx Alliance and Affinity, Asian Student Alliance and Affinity, Jewish Student Affinity, and like other things like that. And all of our like affinities and alliances are student-led, which is one of my favorite parts about Porter's. And I think for student agency, my friend and I recently created a multicultural affinity on campus because we wanted to create a space with people who did identify as multicultural, and like so we can like lean on each other and create a space or create and share unique experiences with one another. And the administration and Office of Equity and Inclusion fully supported us in that process, and they still continue to do so. And I think another example would be our research methods team on campus. Recently, a couple years ago, they studied socioeconomic status and its effect on relationships between the students on campus. And after conducting a focus group, they found that one topic of concern were our class rings. Our class rings cost around $500, and not everyone is able to afford that. So this did create a sense of, or a source of tension, and a source of tension around belonging and equity within our community. But after that realization within our research methods team, they went to the director of financial aid and the chief financial officer and sparked a new conversation around lowering the prices of the rings to make it more accessible to the entire student body and offering the school rings with identical looking medals at different price ranges.
Thank you very much. So I just want to touch on this question. I think you can ensure equity and representation in your schools by giving the students in your community a voice. So the simplest answer here is to just be open with your community and allow for that sense of criticism and opposing ideas. Rather than coming from that place of authority when addressing student agency, it's important to treat each other in an equitable manner. So this is truly how positive changes towards representation occurs. By giving everyone that space to voice their opinions and find solutions, you create room for that equity and representation. And I just think something that has not ensured equity and representation in our schools is the stigma against the student-teacher collaboration and the student-teacher relationship. That has really not ensured equity and representation in our schools. So it's very important that as educators, administrators, and student leaders in your communities, you try and become knowledge and educated on these topics so that you can form these student-teacher collaborations to ensure this equity and representation and open communication with your teachers and administration and students. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia, Luna, and Alyssa, for all those wonderful examples that are given that your schools do to help with this question that was answered. Now we're going to be moving on to a Q&A section led by Sophie, and I'm now going to pass the mic over to her. Thank you.
We had a lot of great questions, and I want to say thank you to everyone for putting your questions in the chat and using the Q&A feature. So for the first question, we're going to start off with, what advice would you give students to take action in school? How might they seek guidance from teachers to set up structures? I'm going to pass this on to Reham and then Lily to answer.
Sophia, could you just repeat the last part of that question? I just missed that.
Yeah, of course. I'll just repeat the whole question. What advice would you give students to take action in school? And how might they seek guidance from teachers to set up structures?
For students, I would definitely encourage them to find a trusted adult or teacher or administrator in the building, and just begin the conversation with them about what your idea is. And if you understand that it's a big idea or an idea that might not be feasible, all in one school year, you should definitely explain that to them and explain that you're coming, explain your rationale for your idea, and the research that you've done. Definitely approach them as a prepared individual so that they know that you are going to take it seriously. On the other hand, from teachers, I would definitely say that when a student approaches you about an idea that they have, even ideas that may seem far-fetched, I would definitely suggest taking the time to talk it through with them. And if there is something that seems not feasible, explain why to them and see if there is a more feasible, not to keep using that word, but a more feasible goal that they can pursue, and then explain the obstacles that they might have to overcome or the process that they should get started. And definitely let them take the lead, but let them know that you will be there if they have questions, if they make a mistake, and that you'll just be there to guide them, but not take over the project. And let them know that it's okay to make mistakes as long as they're not, blatant disregard of rules. And definitely, like I said before, explain the rules to them before they embark on whatever initiative that they plan to take on.
I agree with what you said. That was an amazing answer. Next is Lily.
I would say that advice for students to take action in school is that with anything that you might find that you disagree with or that you don't personally enjoy or like, you should at least say something about it or try to do something, because even the smallest things, working on changing those can lead to even bigger things. And seeking guidance from teachers to set up structures and stuff like that, I think just proposing any idea to a teacher or a trusted adult or anybody like that is good, because even an idea that might seem stupid, even though there's no real such thing as a stupid idea, ideas that might seem small or that you might agree with, somebody else might think that it's a lot better than you, and it might just be your self-confidence. And sometimes smaller ideas might not lead to the exact thing you were thinking about, but it can lead to something a lot bigger than just what you had originated it from.
That was great. Thank you, Lily. Our next question, What advice, no, hold on, sorry. How can we ensure that students have a shared vision so their agency is effective and does not result in conflict amongst them? I'm calling on Macy and Luna to answer these.
Perfect. So I think I kind of already like mentioned this question a bit in the little discussion we had earlier. Again, I think it's important to note that like we don't really need a shared vision. We just need students that are able to kind of navigate dissenting opinions. And I also think it's important to use, I forgot that like none of us really mentioned this yet, but it's important to use this webinar as an example. So we all came together to talk about student agency, obviously, but we all have different backgrounds, different definitions of student agency, different examples, and somehow we're all able to kind of come together and present this for you all. So I think that's also a great example of like, you don't necessarily need a shared vision, you just need motivated students.
I agree with Macy. Students are obviously going to have different opinions, different ideas of what they want their group to do, how they want their leadership structure to look. But I think opening up those conversations and kind of standing back, just monitoring that everybody has a chance to speak and get their ideas out, and there's a fair either vote or discussion is really important. Giving students that freedom to just talk about it, talk it through, offer arguments, and then come to a consensus is really important. It's also developing such important life skills that they're going to be using throughout their whole lives.
I agree. Thank you, Luna. This is probably going to be our last question, and I'm going to call on Jack and Alyssa to answer, but I also want to touch on it really quickly as well. Teacher reluctance in putting students in the driver's seat is the main obstacle. What would you like teachers to hear on your behalf? I just want to say that I really want teachers to hear that they need to trust us and trust their students, because if they don't trust that we want to make these changes to help ourselves, then we can't get anything done if no one is going to support us.
Thank you, Sophia, for that. I would have to say that I definitely agree with you on that, in the sense of I've been in several learning environments with the different schools I have been at, and definitely in that sense where you're able to like trust your teacher is definitely a place where I feel more like wanting to learn in that sense. You know, if there's a teacher that's makes the learning interesting, makes it so they're trustworthy, and like actually wanting to hear what the students say and their opinions, it makes the whole learning experience just better.
I think to uplift what Jack said, student agency can't happen unless we have administration and teachers on board. And I think that the best way for that to happen is definitely with trust being built into the classroom and outside of the classroom. And that could be hard, but I think starting with letting students take action and like letting students have independence within the classroom can definitely go a long way.
Very true, Alyssa. And we actually do have time for one more question, which kind of connects. How have teachers in your respective schools encouraged and supported you to become student leaders? And I would say an example of this is for my school, my administrative helped me and Lily, my colleague, become student leaders because they suggested us to participate in this. And I would not have known that this was something to be done had they not told me about it. Also, whoever wants to answer, I'm going to have this open to all panelists. Whoever feels answering this question can.
I would have to say like probably something that deals with like student leadership was definitely the committees we have at our school. If that's like, as I said like earlier, the stand, if that's social committee, well-being committee, just having that opportunity for students to actually make a change in the school that was up to them and not teachers or not parents, but you know, it's something that the majority of the students wanted is definitely something that I think works.
Okay, so we are almost out of time today. And as a way to wrap up the forum, I would like every panelist to share their final thoughts, starting with Natalia.
Thank you, Alyssa. To kind of wrap this up, I just want to address the educators that are attending this forum directly. I just want to say that I hope from this forum you have been educated, and I hope you continue to seek education on topics such as student agency. And for the student leaders that are listening, I hope that you continue to advocate for it, because as we know, we are the change and educators are preparing us for the future. So I just hope that everyone continues to become educated on these topics. Thank you.
Reham, do you want to share?
Yeah, thank you so much, Natalia, and thank you everyone for being here and taking the time to listen to us. My final thought for everyone is that mostly, I guess, for teachers, but it will always feel like a risk or like an adventure, something new and maybe scary when a student approaches you with an idea that might seem big or ambitious or that hasn't been done before in your school. And that is part of the process. And of course, there will be risks. There might be mistakes made because there is a student doing it for the first time, but that is definitely part of the process. And there will be, in my experience, it will be worth it in the end to overcome all of the challenges, the mistakes, and it will be such a learning experience for both the student, their classmates, and yourself as a teacher.
Jack?
Thank you, Alyssa. I just want to say that I hope all the educators that are attending here today kind of, take away from this that try to make your environment like almost in a sense like a safe place where it's like a trust goes both ways, where your students can trust you and come to you with issues if it's about their work or personal, and where you trust them to make decisions and everything. I think that's definitely just having a big safe place where everyone is trustworthy. Trust is like the big thing, is something that I take away.
Lily?
I just wanted to say, I didn't have a lot to say, but I did one thing that I wanted to say about like disagreements and stuff like that in the student committee, that it's not necessarily a bad thing, because if someone has an idea and everyone agrees with it, then it might be too good to be true. So I don't think that just because people disagree in a group that that's necessarily a bad thing that we should avoid, and it can lead to like further conversations.
Thank you. Luna?
Thank you, everybody, for participating. I have found that teachers encouraging and facilitating student agency has really improved my school experience and created a stronger school community. I'm really happy that so many educators are here and are trying to find ways to encourage their students and create student agency in their schools. Also, thank you to all the panelists for participating. I have definitely learned a lot from every single one of you.
Macy and then Charbel.
As the rest of the panelists said, I'm very thankful for all of the educators that took time out of their day to listen to our thoughts. I also, for my closing thought, wanted to go back to something that Luna had mentioned earlier about not allowing students that maybe aren't vocal student leaders sitting at a NEASC panel to be overlooked. And so I challenge those of you who maybe already have student agency implemented in small areas of your school to consider ways to expand this practice in order to incorporate or involve every student in your school.
Thank you all panelists, everyone that's here, NEASC, everyone. Obviously, I'd like to echo that. My final thought is, as educators, students, administrators, all our stakeholders in the education system, and parents as well, look for fear and figure out why that fear is. Why are you afraid, and what are you afraid of? And then really compare it and what you're scared of, that perceived loss of control, or those students not thriving, or the whole system not working as well as you've been taught and how you've learned, and compare it to the benefits and to the possible benefits of even one student being able to achieve something great and given the opportunity to achieve something great. And I think that you'll find that it'll outweigh the fear 1,000,000 times to 1. Thank you.
And Sophia.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to everyone who came, supported us. And my final thoughts are really just like everyone needs to trust in each other. The students need to trust that their teachers are going to help them and respect their ideas. And teachers need to respect their students and trust that they can do this and that the changes that we are asking for will benefit everyone.
Thank you all for sharing. I think to end off, we did come up with a common consensus of like, trust is very important and necessary in order to move forward with student agency. And I think that's something that we can all work on to be better allies towards students, I guess. I'd also say that it's necessary to like give students a chance and just like rely on us and like believe that we can actually get things done. So thank you all for joining us today on this forum on student agency. We hope that you have some time to share your ideas on social media. You can use the hashtag NEASC Forum when you post. The recording will be available within a day or so on the NEASC website. On behalf of everyone at NEASC and all of us today, thank you again for joining us.